positive, and described by most people as pure sunshine. And we feel very clearly her absence today as a family, because she had this tremendous social ability and power, really, which made everyone she talked to, met, happy as a person. And you know, she is missed as a human being with that sort of capacity.
Many of Martine's friends and those who got the opportunity to know her, among them Nina Brandtzæg, Hedda Homme, and Per Anders Leonardsen, have been quoted in the Norwegian media saying they miss her. They say she was a good-hearted and very likable person, full of love for others. Does this add to the description of the daughter you know?
Yeah, it adds to it as an expression from her friends, but I can just confirm that that is most people's general opinion of Martine. So I can confirm that.
Let us discuss her tragic death. She was raped and murdered by a cruel monster. This is your beloved daughter, Martine. She had a bright future before her. How did you receive the news of her death, and how does the family deal with the sadness this has brought into your lives?
We were receiving a telephone conversation from her flatmates in London, telling us on a Saturday that it was a problem around her whereabouts. They didn't know where she was, and she was a very reliable person, so normally you know, she would have made some feedback or calls back to their flatmates as to where she were. They suggested that we came over, so they apparently saw the seriousness of the situation at that time. So we took the first plane over the next day and got the news that they had found a body that they thought might be our daughter in the basement of a building complex in central London, where also her fellow student, which is now the suspect in this case, resided. So it was actually after we had come to London and was actually in the police station that we got the fatal news that she was passed away.
So when you went to London, you didn't know yet exactly what had
but
happened?
we were extremely worried on the way over. But we hoped, of course, that it was just a case of a missing person at that time.
And as a family who were complete with love in the home, now having to live with a loss of a loved one, but most parents know how painful it is. What do you want to see happen so that you may have some kind of closure, of course without forgetting Martine, as we all know?
Yeah, it's exactly what you are saying. We want a closure to the case because there is one suspect defined by the UK police, and we find that this person, having left the UK just after this tragic event, we feel that it's adding to the overall injustice in this case, that lack of extradition treaties and the Yemeni constitution are used to block a very, very basic human right of justice in a case of this nature. We have to believe that this sort of tragedy is probably the most serious and oldest form of serious crime known to man, the rape and murder of a woman. And that sort of crime is prosecuted everywhere in the world.
Even internationally?
Internationally, irrespective of culture, religion, regime, or location. But we have a case here where the fact that this person has flown, in this case, over a border, you know, makes him in a position where he can actually reject being subject of a legal prosecution in the country of the crime. And that is a very, very basic injustice added to the overall tragedy here.
Yeah, we have the knowledge. According to the British police, there is no doubt that someone is responsible of raping and murdering your daughter. And in this case, they point at one person, like you say, Farouk Abdulhak from Yemen, the last man seen with her that fateful day. This man is in Yemen, as we all know. Does it matter to you where the trial takes place? And if so, can you elaborate why?
Yes, it's very important that the case is subject of a trial in the UK, because they possess all the evidence here. They cannot see a trial in Yemen because they still do the death penalty, and that is not supported by UK authorities. There is also this obligation of a formal suspect that if you have resided in a country, you are supposed to comply with that country's legal framework, which means that if you are subject of a formal suspicion, you are supposed to make yourself available for the police in that country. That is a prerequisite really for entering and also residing in that country. Trying to avoid that happening now is really challenging the legal obligation that this person has, in addition to the fact that our family do not see this closure in a very, very serious legal case.
You want justice, of course, we all know, for your daughter. If Yemeni government refuses to have Farouk Abdulhak extradited to Britain, like you say, you want the trial to be in Britain, and also chooses not to prosecute him, are you planning to go to the international courts to seek redress and compensation in a case against the Yemeni government for not cooperating?
Not against the Yemeni government, because the international regulations and sovereignty thinking around this sort of extradition is as it is. So the Yemeni government is just sticking to their constitution. And also, when there is lack of an extradition treaty, there is really not too much they can do other than advising the suspect or his family to try to return to the UK, the suspects return to the UK on the basis of a voluntary arrangement.
But you really think that's possible, voluntarily? Because here I'm thinking, these are very serious crime, like you said earlier. Rape, murder. It's a very, very serious international crime. We see leaders, like you said also, who are even being taken from their own countries by force, by the international community to be tried, for example, in The Hague, because they have committed the same crimes.
Yes.
Why is the international organizations not participating to see that this is done right for your daughter?
There are, as I said, international regulations that are very, very old and conservative in these sort of problems. But it is made now some attempts by parliamentarians in the OSCE, part of the European Parliament, which has addressed actually the Martine case and used that as an example of trying to work to find new international regulations on so-called cross-border crime, which is not only limited to rape and murder, as in this case, but all other sorts of international crimes as well. And actually, Norwegian parliamentarians last year presented a resolution to the OSCE and had 58 countries signing that treaty, that resolution, including Russia, the United States, Canada, etc., which is, all a result of the international community needs to try to fill this legal vacuum. In our mobile times and transparent time, we are all traveling. We cannot have a legal vacuum of this nature So there are a lot of work going on to try to come around this old-fashioned legal vacuum that lack of extradition treaties between two countries represent today. So I think that the Martine case is about to be becoming a very high-profile, symbolic case in all that work. And I have some of the best legal experts in Norway and also internationally focusing very, very hard on trying to find out how to proceed further. And I'm absolutely sure that they will succeed, because universal values, international legal order and justice is now part of a ethical tsunami, more or less,
yes,
that is going all across the world. You can see it in sport, you know. The world is tired of sportsmen cheating, you know, the doping
yes,
affair
yes,
that we see all around the place. You see it in business, anti-corruption work. You see it in climate sort of areas, and you see it in corporate, the corporate world, where you have CSR, corporate social responsibility, being more and more a necessity on multinational companies' agenda, because by the end of the day, they are living from the normal purchasing power of you and me and everybody else, and we all want a more ethical standard around the world on these issues, and that is exactly what I'm trying to do also in this case.
While on that, we now turn to the support mechanism in your own country. We understand you have support from the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
That is correct.
What kind of assistance do you get, and is it satisfactory? And here I'm thinking about the official assistance and direct assistance and guidance to you and your family privately. We have heard recently that a former Norwegian ambassador to Saudi Arabia and Yemen, Mr. Jan Bogemat, is helping you out on this. What has he done, or what do you expect him to do, since he has been an ambassador in that region?
We have just started our sequence of meetings, because he was appointed just 2 weeks ago to use all his effort and time on the Martine case only. So I've had 2 meetings with him so far, which has been very meaningful. We are discussing now with both the Oslo Center and all other parties in a meeting just over Easter, how to proceed from here. So it's a little bit premature to be able to sort of nail out certain activities and actions that are going to be taken. But it's a very promising move by the Norwegian MFA, and I'm very glad for this this support that they know.
When you say you are going to have meetings, this will be official meetings, internal meetings. Do you also see the need after such meetings to, let's say, inform the media? Because I think the media, if they focus in such cases, it can easily be internationalized.
Right. So far, we have said that these meetings should have a more, well, formal enough, but private, low-profile sort of approach, because we need to be able to discuss very freely the various aspects of this case. So I cannot sort of advise you on behalf of the Norwegian MFA how they are going to sort of expose what is the findings of the meetings successively. But I hope at least in some periods of the discussion that they will be able to update the media on the results.
It has been reported that the British Foreign Secretary William Hague discussed the matter with his Yemeni counterpart recently, Mr. Abu Bakr al-Qurbi.
That is correct.
What has come out of this, and do you think there is any prospects, or they are just politicking profile?
Yes, I have to be quite clear on the fact that these are initiatives, very, very interesting and prosperous initiatives by the UK government. And as you know, I'm not part of those talks as a private person here, as a private victim in this case. So I cannot exactly tell you what has been discussed and result of that, but the discussions has been positive in the sense that also the Yemeni government seemed to be very much on the same route as the UK authorities, the Norwegian authorities, the international pressure, etc., on the fact that justice has to take place. But there are limits to what they can do as long as this person has come to Yemen, because they are not legally allowed to extradite him to the UK.
Let us turn our attention to the rapist and the murderer once again. In this case, as we say, that the police have the suspect in the name of this Yemeni national, Farouk Abdulhak. It is reported that his rich father, Mr. Farouk Abdulhak, is shielding him from being made to answer the charges, whereby he could speak out on what happened to Martine if he is the culprit. What do you say to this claim that it is the father influencing the situation?
I think it's a understanding of cultural matters as to know how the sort of head of the family normally handles challenges that are exposed in this case as to his own family. There are also now negotiations going on, according to the chief inspector in the UK Metropolitan Police, with the father's representatives. As far as I know, a prerequisite for these discussions are that the father should in some way represent his son. And given that that is the case, this is a very clear indication on the fact that he is making all the decisions in this case on behalf of his son.
What would you want to tell the leaders of Yemen?
I would also, just on your former question,
yes,
like to add that a lawyer representing the suspect, a local lawyer in Yemen, has also, in a documentary on the case, said that the father is paying for his son's living expenses, lawyers, etc. in Yemen. So it has been, out in the media a long time, very clear indications that the father is a very central person in protecting his son. With regard to the Yemen authorities, I'm glad to see that Al-Kirbi, the foreign minister, and also other parts of the Yemeni government, there are also been discussions with the President Hadi, that they all seem to be very much in favor of a just solution being a return of the suspect to the UK at this time. But again, I can only ask the Yemeni government to continue to advise both the suspect and the father to try to ensure that justice prevails here on moral and ethical grounds. And I will also ask or add to this that there are reasons to believe, as far as I understood understand, that the suspect prior to coming to Yemen in 2008 did not hold a Yemeni passport. He did hold a Syrian passport, a US passport, and an Egyptian passport, because he was raised in Egypt and he was also living sometime in the US, etc. But actually not in Yemen. But he was brought back there now as a part of fleeing the UK in 2008. And I believe, although I cannot confirm that, but he now has a Yemeni passport. So in that sense, I would say that the Yemeni government should maybe see an opening there for sort of putting some emphasis to their demands for him to return voluntarily to the UK, in addition to all the other ethical and moral aspects and arguments.
Finally, Mr. Magnussen, look at directly to that camera on my right, and speak to Farouk Abdulhak's father, Farouk Abdulhak. A message from a father whose daughter was brutally raped and murdered, to a father whose son is not being availed to shed light into the events of that fateful day in London.
Yeah, I feel that I'm not here to make a concrete advice to the father. I think the parental aspect of the father's situation here should really be enough for him to find out a just decision based on right and wrong, which is a part of the parental role of any parent.